me ask you something powerful. Who are you when the spotlight fades? When the applause dies down? When the room is empty? When there's no one there to cheer you on or judge your moves? Who are you? Because that right there is where greatness is born. Most people spend their entire lives trying to impress others, performing, pretending, hoping to get noticed. But the truth, the people who truly rise, they don't do it for the claps. They don't do it for the likes, for the followers, or for validation. They do it because they've made a decision to become someone they respect. The world tells you to grind hard, but what about grinding smart when no one's watching? Are you disciplined when no one's holding you accountable? Are you honest when no one would know if you cut corners? Do you still study, work, grow, train when no one's clapping for you? Because success doesn't show up in your life by accident. It shows up because you were doing the work in silence when no one saw it. And here's the real power. When you train yourself to win in private, your results explode in public. You no longer need motivation. You have momentum. You have identity. You're no longer trying to be successful. You are someone who succeeds. But it starts in the dark. Early mornings, late nights, no recognition, no praise, just you and the standard you refuse to lower. Most people break in the silence because they need someone watching to perform, but not you. Because once you understand that real power comes from how you lead yourself when no one else is around, then you stop waiting for opportunities and start becoming the opportunity. And don't think this is just about business or money. It's about your mindset, your habits, your health, your relationships. Are you loving your partner with intention when they're not giving you attention? Are you working on your craft when the world is sleeping? Are you acting with integrity when there's no prize for doing the right thing? Listen, this is what separates the amateurs from the pros. Amateurs work when it's convenient. Pros work because it's who they are. And here's the paradox. When you master your private world, the public world eventually takes notice. Not right away, not instantly, but it will. Because truth echoes. And excellence can't be hidden forever. You want confidence? Earn it in the dark. You want mastery? Build it in the shadows. You want impact? Shape it in the silence. And then when the world finally sees you, you won't be performing. You'll just be revealing what you've already become. So decide today who you're going to be when no one is watching. Because when you own those moments, you own your life. When no one is watching, that's when your real identity steps into the light. Not for the world to see, but for you to confront. Because in those quiet, invisible moments, there's no audience, no expectations, no pressure to perform, just you, your choices, and the truth. That's where your true character is revealed. You see, it's easy to act confident when people are cheering for you. It's easy to be disciplined when someone's holding you accountable. It's easy to do the right thing when there are consequences for doing wrong. But the real measure of your integrity, your personal power, is what you choose to do when there are no eyes on you. That's the moment that defines everything else. When no one is watching, you're not acting for show. You're not polishing your image. You're not checking the mirror to make sure others will approve. You are simply you, raw, real, and unfiltered. And those moments of privacy, those moments in solitude, that's where the roots grow deep. Character is not built in public. It's exposed there. It's built when you wake up early, not because you have to, but because you said you would. It's built when you choose to stay honest in your finances, in your relationships, in your responsibilities, even when there's a shortcut that no one would ever know you took. It's built when you treat people with respect, even if you know they can't do anything for you. That's strength. That's leadership. That's self-respect. People are always chasing confidence. They want to feel strong. They want to walk into a room and own it. But confidence doesn't come from words or affirmations. It comes from alignment. It comes from knowing that who you are in public is the exact same as who you are in private. It's the inner peace that grows when you stop living a double life. You don't have to fake it. You don't have to perform. You just show up as you are because you trust yourself. And you trust yourself because you've proven over and over again in the silence that you can count on you. Let me tell you something. Your brain is always watching. Your subconscious is always paying attention to whether or not you keep your word. So when you say you'll work out and then you hit snooze, when you say you'll eat clean and then make excuses, when you say you'll study, show up, or give your best, and you don't, your mind records it. Not because you got caught, but because you broke trust with yourself. That's why some people never feel worthy of success. Not because they aren't talented, but because deep down, they don't believe in themselves anymore. Why? Because they've abandoned themselves too many times in private. But the good news, you can rebuild it. Every time you do what's right, when it's hard, every time you stay true, when no one would ever know otherwise, you're making a deposit into your self-respect account. You're becoming someone solid, someone rooted, someone you can be proud of. And when that inner pride takes hold, when you know who you are, when no one is watching, that's when the world begins to respond differently to you. Not because you're faking greatness, but because you become it. It's in the silence where greatness is chosen. It's in the invisible hours where the strongest version of you is born. And if you can own those moments, if you can show up for yourself when it's quiet, when it's boring, when no one's clapping, you become unstoppable. Discipline in silence. When there's no one to notice, no one to clap, no one to hold you accountable, is one of the most underrated superpowers a person can build. It's easy to be consistent when people are watching. It's easy to show up with energy and effort when there's a deadline, a crowd, a reward. But what about when it's just you, your thoughts, and that small voice inside asking, does it even matter if I do this today? That's the exact moment your future is being shaped. Not in the noise, but in the quiet. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. The world tells you to chase motivation, to get hyped, to stay inspired. But discipline doesn't wait for inspiration. It doesn't need a reason to act. It becomes the reason. And the most powerful form of discipline is the kind you practice when there is no external pressure. No alarm going off telling you to move, no boss breathing down your neck, no one checking in on your goals, just the deep internal standard you've set for yourself because you've decided that your dreams matter, even when they're not visible yet, especially when they're not visible yet. When you build discipline in silence, you start stacking wins that no one can see, but you can feel. The workout you complete when you could have hit snooze, the book you read when everyone else is binge watching TV, the small decision to keep your promise to yourself, even when no one would know if you didn't. These invisible victories are more powerful than the public ones because they build something unshakable, self-respect. Every time you follow through on what you said you would do, even in private, you're telling your brain, I can trust me. And that trust becomes the foundation of unbreakable confidence. Think about it. Confidence doesn't come from shouting affirmations in the mirror. It comes from evidence. The evidence that you did the work, that you stayed consistent, that you moved forward inch by inch, even when you didn't feel like it. The more you build this private resume of consistency, the more you walk into situations already knowing you've earned your place. You're not trying to convince anyone you're capable. You know you are, because you've already paid the price in full behind closed doors. And here's the truth. Discipline and silence frees you. It frees you from the need for applause. It frees you from the roller coaster of external validation. Because when you are solid on the inside, the world outside doesn't shake you as easily. You become calm in chaos, steady in storms, focused while others panic. You've trained for this, not once or twice, but day after day in the private arena where character is built and pretenders quit. The people who go the farthest are not the loudest. They are the most grounded, the most disciplined, the ones who don't need reminders, don't need babysitters, don't need fans. They are driven by a mission so personal, so meaningful, that they simply refuse to break the standard they've set for themselves. That's real power. Not hype, not noise, just consistent, quiet execution that compounds into greatness. So if you're doing the work and it feels like no one sees it, good. That means you're doing it for the right reason. Keep showing up, keep pushing, keep building your internal empire, because the day will come when the world finally sees what you've built in the dark, and it will look like magic. But you'll know it wasn't magic. It was discipline, practiced in silence, forged in fire, built when no one was watching. The truth is, your private habits will always predict your public outcomes. You can't hide from the results of how you live when no one's looking. You might fool people for a while with your words, your appearance, your social media posts, but life doesn't respond to performance. It responds to patterns. And the patterns you repeat daily in silence, in solitude, in your unguarded moments, those are what shape your destiny. You don't suddenly succeed on stage, at work, in relationships, or in business. You succeed long before that, in the invisible routines you practice every single day. If someone wants to know where their life is headed, they don't need a fortune teller. They just need to examine what they're doing when no one's around. What are you feeding your mind with? What conversations are you having with yourself? How do you use your free time? Are you building yourself or distracting yourself? Are you creating or just consuming? That quiet space between tasks, that window before you go to bed, that hour when you could go above and beyond but no one would notice if you didn't, that's where you're either preparing for greatness or postponing it. You see, the reason people often feel stuck isn't because they lack talent or potential. It's because their private habits contradict the results they say they want. You can't want clarity and spend every evening numbing out. You can't want energy and stay up all night scrolling. You can't want to lead and never take responsibility behind closed doors. There's a deep disconnect between what people desire publicly and what they do privately. And that gap is where dreams silently die. But when your private life starts to align with your vision, everything changes. Your rituals in the dark are training you for the light. The way you speak to yourself when no one hears it, that shapes your self-image. The food you put in your body, the discipline in your mornings, the time you invest in learning, all of it stacks up, slowly but surely, until one day the world looks at you and thinks, how did they do it? They see the outcome. You know it was the process. And more importantly, you know you earned it. And let's be real. There's nothing glamorous about these private habits. There's no audience cheering you on while you stretch instead of slouch. No standing ovation when you choose to journal instead of binge. No one celebrates the nights you chose to learn instead of escaping. But every one of those choices is building a version of you that is stronger, wiser, and more in control. The reward doesn't come instantly. It builds silently until suddenly the results are too big to ignore. People often chase performance hacks, shortcuts, quick wins. But the truth is, it's not about what you do occasionally in front of others. It's about what you do consistently when no one knows. That's the gap between those who stay stuck and those who move forward. When you finally take full ownership of those private habits, your focus sharpens, your energy returns, your purpose deepens, and most importantly, your life starts moving in the direction of your intention. There is no such thing as wasted effort when it's aligned with your growth. Even if no one sees you grinding, improving, sharpening, you see it. And eventually, so will everyone else. So if you want better results, look inward. Upgrade what you do in the quiet hours, because you can't cheat your way to excellence. You can't fake consistency, and you will never outperform your private habits. You either rise to meet them or fall to match them. Consistency without validation is the rarest kind of discipline. And it's the very trait that separates the average from the extraordinary. Most people can show up strong once, maybe twice, when the timing feels right and someone's watching. But true greatness isn't born in those bursts of energy or flashes of attention. It's born in the repeated, unseen efforts that never get applause. The real game changer is the one who shows up every single day, not for praise, not for recognition, but because they made a commitment to themselves. They stay in motion when no one is clapping, when no one is posting about it, and when the results are still invisible. And that level of consistency, that quiet, relentless effort, is what builds something unbreakable. You have to understand, validation is addictive. The likes, the compliments, the acknowledgement. It feels good. It feeds your ego, but it can also make you dependent. Because once you start relying on that external feedback to feel worthy, you're no longer in control. You're performing. You're adjusting your pace to other people's reactions. But those who operate at the highest level have detached from that need. They've learned how to keep going, keep pushing, keep evolving, not because someone is telling them they're great, but because they've decided their mission is too important to stop for applause. The people who change their lives, their businesses, their bodies, their futures, they're not always the most talented. They're not always the smartest in the room, but they're almost always the ones who stayed consistent when no one cared. They made decisions when it didn't feel good. They followed through when there was no crowd. They kept promises to themselves when it was inconvenient. And every day they repeated those small actions, those micro commitments. They built something far more valuable than recognition. They built identity. And identity is what drives everything. When you begin to identify as someone who is consistent, someone who follows through, someone who doesn't need outside encouragement to do what matters, you stop waiting to become successful and start living as someone who already is. Because success isn't about a destination. It's about alignment. It's about waking up and choosing again and again to live in harmony with the standard you've set, even when no one acknowledges it. Think about it. How powerful would you become if your effort didn't depend on attention? If your work ethic didn't depend on someone else noticing? If your mindset wasn't influenced by applause, likes, or validation? You'd be unstoppable. You'd be free. Because you'd no longer be chasing approval, you'd be chasing mastery. When you can show up daily for your vision, even when it feels like nothing's happening, you're actually doing the most important thing, compounding momentum. That's the hidden magic. Every workout, every quiet reading session, every rep, every journal entry, every hour of focused work, it's all stacking, even when it looks like nothing's changing. Most people quit during this stage because they mistake invisibility for failure, but those who endure, those who keep showing up without fanfare, are the ones who eventually explode past everyone else. So if it feels like no one sees your effort right now, that's not a sign to stop. It's confirmation you're on the right track. Because the top 1%, they didn't get there by waiting for someone to care. They got there because they cared enough about their mission to stay consistent, even in silence, even in isolation, even when the world wasn't watching. And that kind of consistency, it changes everything. So